the Cybersecurity and Compliance Podcast with Craig Petronella. Learn about the most current IT security threats in ransomware, phishing, business email compromise, cybercrime tactics, cyber heist schemes, social engineering scams, as well as hints and tips from leading professionals to help you prevent hackers from penetrating your network and dropping ransomware or malware payloads. This podcast will arm you with the best info to defend your network against the latest cyber crimes. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And now, here's your host, Craig Petronella.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the PTG podcast. Today, it is myself and Craig, and of course, Blake.
Hello.
The one and only.
The one and only Blake.
That's right. Just me.
Yep, I've never met another Blake. Yeah, so today we're going to talk about your kids, but not really your kids in a creepy way. We're going to talk about your kids and how you can teach them about cybersecurity and make it fun.
I think this is going to be a good one. I don't think anybody's ever talked about this.
I think we've discussed it.
Yeah, I think we broached the topic a couple times. Really depends on the type of school that your kids go to as well. I think that private schools are ahead of public schools in regards to technology. Obviously, busy households that have a lot of technology and a lot of devices, a lot of endpoints, maybe Amazon Alexa or Google or whatever devices on the network, depending on the age of the kids or children in your house, will depend on a lot of different angles and factors. But I would start off with proper training. I think a lot of kids like to tinker and experiment. Maybe it's the drive to play a new video game or boredom to try to find something to do. I think there's a couple of different angles around this topic, but I would start with security awareness training. We have various curriculum that we've built for all types of scenarios and situations on our compliancearmor.com website. It's very inexpensive but proven, audited, and effective training, not only for kids and children and families, but also for consumers and for businesses alike. Obviously, at the household level, there's probably not any really regulations or anything like that, but good hygiene, best practices with passwords. Never write your passwords down on sticky notes and keep them around the computer. But I would start from the endpoint level. A lot of families have technology that's of various age and quality. And obviously with cybersecurity, the older the endpoint, the older the device is really, as it ages, it becomes less secure. And the reason for that is the manufacturer, after a period of time called end of life, the manufacturer is no longer going to patch and update and provide security updates, which is why it's a very bad idea to have old devices on your network, because that's how people get hacked. Moving on from there, there's, I guess, a myth around people thinking that Apple devices are more secure than Windows devices. There are viruses and malware that exist for Mac as well as PC, of course. I think that it's really just a matter of the hackers are targeting by market share. They are going to write viruses and malware and various threats for Microsoft first and then adapt to other platforms like Linux and Mac. So I would start off with, if you have an old computer, now's the time, better than ever, to upgrade that device. If it can be upgraded, which means you can load new software on it, that's an option. But if it's really over 5 years old, it's not usually worth fixing or doing anything to. You're better off getting a new device. The recommendations are really personal preference around that, whether you are a Mac or an Apple fan or a Microsoft fan or maybe a Linux fan. Just really depends. But getting modern devices that are supported and making sure that they're patched and up to date, because even if you get a brand new computer, if you go down the road and you pick one up, if you have an insecure network and you plug that thing to your internet and it's unpatched, it can, right out of the styrofoam, get infected. So you have to follow a process for making sure that all updates are applied and just really be careful with that period of time as it's brand new until it's fully patched up. And then obviously enable security software. In the Microsoft world, there's Windows Defender. You can choose other products that are out there, like Malwarebytes, for example. Those are some options as well.
So I guess probably most parents, what they do is they hand down their devices to their children. I'm assuming that's probably the smartest idea, maybe?
Again, I think it depends on the age window. So if a parent wants a new computer and the device that the parent is using is within the warranty or support period, then that's okay to do that. But if the device is 5 years old already and then they hand it down to their kids,
You're just asking for trouble.
yeah, because here's the thing. You as a parent are probably not going to the same websites as kid might go to. And sadly, the reality is that a lot of hackers prey on kids and they inject malware in video games and social media sites, and different things that kids would search for or navigate to may differ from what you may navigate to. So my point is that if it's not supported and it's not in warranty, you're asking for trouble by handing it down. If and only if, and I'll say this with a caveat, maybe the kid is of older age and is quite technically savvy and can format and reinstall a modern operating system on it, like Windows 11 or Linux. Or if your kid can do something like that and modernize the software, then that's okay to repurpose. But most people and most kids, that's a lot of trouble, and that's a technical path that opens a whole new can of worms. So my point is that if you've got Windows XP, just take the hard drive out, beat it up with a hammer, and throw the rest of it away. Or use it for target practice,
Take it to Goodwill or the local recycling bin. So what age do you think is the prime target to start conditioning your children into best cybersecurity practices?
So I think if your kids are actively needing to use the free Google services and G Suites, or if Google is the choice of the school and that starts with second grade, then that's the time. I would say the timing is really dependent on when they go online. If they're going online before school and they're going online because the parents are busy and they need to work or they need to get stuff done, and that's kind of a here, play this game kind of thing, well, there should be some parameters set around what device they should be given and what access they should be allowed and what they should be able to do. And it should be supervised. If it can't be supervised, then there needs to be some due diligence on the parent side to make sure that the device is properly secured, patched up, and supported before just handing it over to the kid. Because otherwise what will happen is there could be a nasty malware or infection that could happen that just takes seconds. So going back to our eat your vegetables, eat more onions, it's all about the layers. Hardware layers, software layers, human layers.
I heard a rumor, and I don't know if this is true, and probably you could vouch for this, but a lot of schools are starting getting kids involved in technology, and they're putting them into the Chrome OS ecosystem. I don't know if that's true. That's what I heard. Heard that a long time ago.
For schools, you said?
Yeah, like public schools. Little Johnny's got to do this or that or something. We need a laptop. It's a part of the checklist.
So I think that's true. I think that some schools have adopted the Google Chromebook model. But I also heard, and maybe some schools do it better than others, but I heard that they cause a lot of trouble too. And what I mean by that is Chromebooks are kind of like thin clients. They're really stripped down and optimized for Google and Google's ecosystem. They're just really basic devices, typically with low CPU. They're just really stripped down to use Google G Suite and Google Gmail and other types of services. And it's fine for that. I think once you get out of that ecosystem, though, and maybe want to play a game or want to do something that's more multimedia driven, I think that's where those devices struggle. For example, running Zoom on a Chromebook might not really have the best amount of resources to properly do video and audio, as well as maybe a full-fledged laptop, for example.
I remember I was at Best Buy, and this is unrelated, but still, I was going through and they have a section for Chromebooks, and I literally look over in Google somehow, some way, you probably know exactly where I'm going with this. Somehow, some way, they thought it was a good idea to make $1,000 Chromebook. I don't know. It looks like a little Apple laptop. That's $1,000. But the reason why I'm just balking here is Chrome OS is a super light operating system. Like you said, it's like a thin client. It takes nothing to run. Most of the Chromebooks, they have 4 gigs of RAM or gigs of solid state or EMC or whatever.
It's optimized for an always online connected experience. So if you use it within the brackets or parameters of what it was designed to do, then it works great. But once you try to go outside of that, where you're stuck in an airport or you're stuck in a remote location and you don't have stable internet, then that device is no longer a great tool. you don't have the ability, or it's not very easy. There are some features that allow you to work offline, but my point is that it's optimized for an always connected, always online internet experience. Like with thin clients are great devices for businesses. They have usually nowadays a solid state hard drive. They have minimal CPU and RAM. They're really built for the long haul. They don't have a lot of moving parts. Some of them don't have any moving parts, so they're solid state. The whole thing is solid state. Oftentimes they're fanless. So really not much to fail or die on it. So when you connect a thin client properly to a private cloud or a public cloud, for example, a terminal server, remote desktop services, or virtual desktop infrastructure powered by VMware or Citrix, if you connect to those cloud properties, you're getting all of the compute power from the cloud. Again, it's relying upon an always on line connected experience. By itself, it's pretty bare bones and minimal. It can't really do much. But when you connect it to the cloud, it opens the door and makes it a great tool for certain situations. So I think that's what was trying to be done with the Chromebook experience with Google. Google was like, okay, we'll give our online tools and our online experience, Gmail, G Suites, collaboration around editing documents at the same time, all the great stuff that Google has produced in that fashion. But once you step out of that box and now you want to load some other kind of software, or you want to do more audiovisual work, now that device or that tool, it may not be the best tool for the job. It depends on a deep study and assessment on what are you using the tool for and what's the best tool for the job.
Yeah, I think probably the coolest part, again, this isn't a Chromebook plug, but this is a good segue point. It does have the built-in parental controls, which is probably advantageous to most parents. And I think that's probably easier to set up, but it probably has its advantages internally versus, let's just say you have a child and they're running Windows 10, 11, Mac, I think, out of the box. So what would be an alternative there for parents who want to monitor their kids' online activity?
Yeah, that's a good point with the parental controls and the built-in functionality. I think that functionality is good. Oftentimes, I feel like depending on the ecosystem, whether it's Google or Amazon, Alexa, or whatever it is, I think that they give parents a decent set of tools, but none of them are perfect, in my opinion. Nothing's perfect nowadays, but I guess none of them are very granular. And what I mean by that, for my own experience with Amazon devices and Kindles, for example, Apple seems to, in my opinion, do a better job of the parental control side of things. But I think it also puts a lot of pressure on parents too, because now the parents have to have crash course on how do they configure this thing properly so that their kid could do what they need to do if they authorize it, but then not be troublesome. And I know for me, at least for personal experience, and I'm technical, the Amazon Kindle, man, that thing is a bit of a learning curve, even for me. And I guess my point is that if you have access to parental controls, definitely as a parent, study them and see what you can and cannot do with them. Sometimes there's no control that is available to do what the child needs to do. So you have to use your profile and then you have to be available to revoke it. I know with my family, I've had to change my PIN numbers and have different things in place to prevent accidental purchases, or maybe they said it was an accident, but there wasn't, but that's a whole other story, to buy a different video game or whatever it is, or an add-on to a video game. My point is that as parents, we have to research and explore the tools that are available to us, like parental control, for example, but also make sure that the device is the best suited for what you want your child to have access to as well. I know, for example, I don't know if you guys know this, but there was an issue with YouTube, Google and YouTube, where YouTube wasn't properly segmenting certain content for kids, and kids were getting access to content that was really bad. Do you guys remember any of this?
I heard about it.
What is the recent thing? The TikTok challenge or something? It was almost like that, only it was on YouTube.
Oh, yeah.
And it was suicidal kind of stuff. And it was just really awful stuff. The hackers, or the bad actors in this case, were exploiting flaws in the tagging or segmentation of what a child can and cannot see.
That's disgusting.
They were using hashtags and syntax. It goes outside the algorithm, apparently, of YouTube. I could be entirely wrong, but whoever was uploading the videos could mark them as kid-friendly. And yeah, it would be like creepypasta stuff or really dark, scary stuff.
That can really mess up a kid.
Yeah, as a parent, when you give technology or a device to your child, there's some responsibility that the parent has to have. And sadly, you can't trust the make, model, or manufacturer of the endpoint or device to do that job for you. It's really a responsibility at the parent level to still police and monitor. One of the recommendations that I have is have the device in an area where you are as a parent, so you can kind of glance over and see what's happening, because kids are curious. They're going to want to click on stuff that pops up, and sometimes those pop-ups are not necessarily good pop-ups. So my point is that the parent can catch things at the human level that maybe shouldn't have happened at the technological level because of parental control, but maybe there was a flaw in it. So my point is you can't overly trust a parental control to do a human's job.
That makes sense.
Right. Something too that I guess this is my experience, right? Because I grew up on technology. I grew up in the age of computing. My parents never monitored my internet. I could do whatever. But something that never really dawned on me until now, and I think maybe because I grew up in the computing boom, but at the time there wasn't a lot of research about how damaging computers are or technology. Cell phones, tablets, they're everywhere. You know how damaging they are to your eyes, laptops, and posture. I grew up living with these things and living on these things. And now at 32, I feel like death.
Well, that's pretty bad.
That took a turn.
Blake, stop what you're doing right now. Call 911 and go straight to the hospital.
No. Think about it, though. So posture, right, is really important. Physical, mental well-being and blood flow, blood circulation, yada, yada.
Yeah, that's a really good point, too.
Within the past 3 to 4 years, they started figuring out about the blue light that affects sleep rhythm. So these are things that nobody talks about unless hey, look, little Timmy, don't use your phone an hour before bed.
Well, that's because with Facebook, for example, and the social experiments, everybody's a guinea pig.
Yeah.
Right.
The founders claim they didn't anticipate or know that when they released their platform that it would have negative impacts of depression and all sorts of stuff on kids and minors. And you're absolutely right. Back when I started, my parents didn't really police it, really for TV back when I was growing up. I remember watching all sorts of stuff.
Well, and Craig, we're similar ages. And I know I did not experience the internet for the first time until I was 15. And I was like, this is crazy. I can talk to people all over the world. What is going on? And so, yeah, my parents didn't even know to monitor the internet.
Well, they probably didn't know the capabilities of it.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I think that probably makes a difference.
I think nobody knew.
Nobody knew.
People just realized how powerful this is, how you can connect people. And then essentially you're inviting intruders into your home now.
Yeah.
If you think about it from this perspective, everybody who's got a computer now has a gateway into their personal, private, and their home. Hackers can get in without having to have a key. Before computers, people had to physically break in, but now you have an access point for people with bad intentions.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just don't think anybody could have predicted how computers can be so integrated with everything now. I think about IoT.
Mm-hmm.
Now everything is Wi-Fi connected. Everything. Cars. Right. Cars have Wi-Fi hotspots. There's a bunch of other stupid things that have Wi-Fi hotspots, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. When I was growing up, when I first was tinkering with, at that time, bulletin board systems or BBSs, it was all modem driven, right? So it was a one-on-one handshake connection. Now we're in seconds connected to the World Wide Web. And the reality is in seconds, you can connect to anything in the world that's connected to the same internet you are. And I don't think a lot of people stop and think about that for a minute of how easy it is for somebody hidden in the world that wants to do bad things that can be anonymous and unidentified connect to your system.
Everything that you own, everything of importance is on your computer. What do you think's worse? Getting your wallet stolen or getting your computer stolen? I think computer, not because of the cost, but because of the sensitivity, the information. If you get your credit card, driver's license, whatever stolen, you can just cancel it and you can go get another driver's license. But if your computer gets stolen and you've got thousands of files or terabytes or gigs or whatever you got on there, your work stuff, your personal stuff, scans, maybe you've got scans for jobs or scans of your birth certificate, or it's all there.
That's right.
Everything's digital. So yeah, just my 2 cents, but it is scary to think about.
It is.
Absolutely.
Tell us about your growing up in computing, Erin.
Oh, me? I remember the first time I ever used the internet. I'd used a computer, right? I actually, in middle school, I'm such a nerd. I used to love Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego. I lived out in the country.
I played that. Oh yeah, it's awesome.
I couldn't necessarily just go out and play, so I would play on the computer. But I wasn't like Craig, and I would love to hear Craig talk about that a little bit more, but I wasn't like Craig, like I didn't take anything apart. I was really into books. I did enjoy some games. Obviously, I also played the original Oregon Trail, so that was fun. We took computer classes. And I remember I took a typing class in high school, which I'm so thankful because my boyfriend, love him to death. He's a pecker. He pecks. And I just can't imagine working like that.
It's so funny because I remember my growing up in computing experience. Obviously, I grew up in a pretty connected family. My mom had a little VHS camcorder that we used to do home movies on, like Christmas and Thanksgiving and yada, yada. I was skateboarding, so I used that camera to film skateboard videos, and then something got damaged or something got stuck in there. So I took it apart. My mom opened the door and saw the camera and like,
oh, little Blake.
yeah, hundreds of parts or however many parts just scattered. I literally would put them in little segments and lay them out into kind of like a little mini diagram. Across my floor, so there's no place that you could walk on the floor without stepping on camera parts. I think it was my mom. I was kind of using everybody else's computer. You started off with a family computer. Nobody had personal computers.
No, yeah.
And me and my brother would argue about whose time it was to like get on the computer.
Yes.
And my mom had a computer, and my mom would sell stuff on eBay. She was huge on eBay. So she literally had this computer for just eBay, just eBaying stuff. My mom was an epic eBayer. And yeah, then of course, everything kind of went digital, and I started editing my skate videos on her computer. I took a part-time job, saved as much money as I could. I got my first computer, and it was an Apple iBook G3.
Okay.
Which at the time was $500 or $600, like an insane amount of money to me.
Yeah, it's a big purchase.
Yeah, no, I worked 3 summers to get it. And then, yeah, I've been rocking it ever since.
Nice. Yeah, so Craig, you used to take apart computers, right? So when you were talking about what to do with old computers, I just got a flash in my head of little tiny Craig with his mom's old computer just sitting around the living room in the 80s, taking it apart.
Yeah, so actually, it's a funny story. So my sister was going to college, and she gets this brand new Dell computer. And I think at the time it was like $3,800 or $4,000. So she financed it. So it was super expensive.
Wow.
Oh my God.
And I get a hold of it and I take the damn thing apart.
Oh, God.
Good.
So I have it all apart all over the floor. And my sister's like, I am going to kill you.
I'm surprised she said she was going to kill you and just...
I know, and then just do it.
I said, it only kills back together and it doesn't work. So I put it all back together, and it, of course, worked fine. But I wanted to learn about it and figure out how it worked and everything. And after my parents saw that I was able to disassemble the whole damn thing and put it all back together.
They're like, maybe we should encourage this.
Yeah, they ended up buying a computer for the quote unquote family. And they kind of got ripped off. At the time, there were a lot of companies that were building computers. And most people, I would think, that don't know a lot about something, it's easy for that to happen. I was grateful to have anything. So I took that thing apart, and
this is how I show my gratitude.
That's right. Yeah. And learned about how the video card and all the components worked and everything, and started upgrading the components to make it more powerful and do what I wanted it to do. I liked video games at the time. So I actually started on a Commodore 64 that my brother had, that my family bought. And you literally had to type in load, quote, and commands to make the thing work. And it was a floppy disk type setup. I don't know if you remember floppy disks.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm not that much younger than you.
I do too.
Yeah, so they were 5.25-inch floppy disks. And yeah, if you didn't type the command the right way, it didn't load. And at that time, there was just so many things that could go wrong. It was really rare, actually, for something not to go wrong and for things to just work. So this was like right around the time when Nintendo and Atari were popular. And honestly, the edges of those console systems were really, it just works. You get the cartridge, you plug it in, and you turn it on and it works. At least most of the time, or more often than the computers. But the computer games at the time were different, and they were more robust, and they were more in depth than the cartridge systems, which is why I liked them better. That was my experience taking things apart and putting things back together. And then shortly after my parents got that computer for me and I started upgrading components, that's when I was like, okay, I know how to play pretty much most video games, but how do I take this to the next level? And that's when I started learning about how to connect my computer through a modem. And it was literally reliving the movie War Games. I don't know if you ever saw War Games, the movie, but it's a great movie. So I learned how to use modem, and I learned how to install the modem to my computer and connect the modem to my dad's fax line at the time, and literally took over his fax line. And I remember many times he would be like, what the hell? Why is this thing busy all the time? I can't even send a damn fax.
I don't know, Dad.
Sorry, I'm just waiting for something to finish. You can't disrupt it yet. And I was waiting at the time. Everything was all about what's called parity, little pieces to build up one thing. So what I mean by that is the modems were slow. Even the fastest ones at that time, they were slow. So you had to break up games that were large into small pieces. And sometimes those pieces might be 20 files to build up that one game. And you would send the files. At the time, the size of a floppy disk was 720 kilobytes, and then high density is 1.44 megabytes. So sometimes the video game might be 15 or 20 megabytes. So you'd have to break it up accordingly. So anyway, it would take a really long time to transmit over a modem connection. So that's why the line was busy all the time. So I would literally run this. I started a BBS and I learned how to customize it and get it online and gave it a name, started marketing it and got people to trade games. And yeah, it was just a whole hidden underground world that your average person had no clue that it even existed. It was like the cool factor for that time period.
Yeah, because you're talking about the 80s, right?
Late 80s, early 90s.
I was 15 the first time that I ever saw the internet, and I was absolutely flabbergasted. But here's Craig over here. He's like, it's old news.
So what was cool was after I built and we're going off on a big tangent, but after I built the computer and started the BBS and things like that, beta testers would send me like in beta format.
Oh.
And I started evaluating games before they even hit the shelf. I would literally have games 3 to 6 months before the public had them. At the time, it was like Electronics Boutique, and I would go through Electronics Boutique. Games were expensive still. It was like $60 still for a game on computer, $50, $60. And I would literally go down the wall and I would have most of the games that were there. I would have had them for months.
Pretty awesome.
Anyway, reeling back in, my parents had no idea about any of this stuff. So it goes back to watching your kids or whatever. And not necessarily that it was a bad thing. It was a priceless experience to go through. And I certainly encourage it for children now. It just needs to be supervised.
Yeah.
Because now
Times have changed.
Yeah, there's just a lot of different risks that didn't exist back then. So it's just a different period of time. So my point is that, well, they have even cool stuff now, though. If you're a technical parent, you can get a Raspberry Pi device and you can do experiments and you can get a book and do labs and different kind of exercises with your child or children if they like that tinkering kind of stuff. So there's all different stuff that didn't exist that help create that safe environment to do so. But my point is now, if you unpolice a device and you just leave it, there's just a lot of risks now. You really need to have training, just really a process that's best for your family on how to make sure that you're being safe online. One of the things that a lot of people don't know about, which would probably benefit a lot of our listeners, is when you go to the internet, you're oftentimes leveraging a service called DNS or domain name system. Most people are not going to remember the IP address to Google. You're going to type in Google and you're going to get there because your computer is going to use DNS to translate it into the IP address. And that's how humans surf the internet. Well, if you just change your router's DNS settings to quad 9, which is really 9.9, and I know that's technical and it sounds super complicated, but it's really not that bad. If you go into your router settings and you change the DNS address to 4 nines, 9.9.9.9, you immediately protect yourself and your kids because all of your traffic is now routed through Quad 9's network. And Quad 9, if you just Google search Quad 9, I think it's just Quad, type it out, QUAD space 9. If you go there, you'll see that they do a lot of filtering at the DNS level, and it's all for free. So quad9.net is actually the website. So it's a public and free DNS service, and it has security baked in it. It immediately protects you from malware and a lot of threats and things like that. Right now, I'm on their website, and it says 100 million with an M, are average daily blocks. So they're blocking 100 million plus malware threats, 20 plus threat intelligence providers, 150 resolver clusters in 90 different countries. So if you just listen and you did this one thing, this one layer, as we call it, eat your onions, this is a huge layer to protect you and your family. But this is why it's so important to do training to stay on top of this stuff. And you can get your training at compliancearmor.com. It's inexpensive, but it's priceless because you learn about these little things that can be done oftentimes for free. And it's just a couple settings changes and you're off to the races and you have a much more secure experience.
That's really good advice.
Yeah.
Yep.
And a great way to help protect your family.
We kind of obviously showed our growing up in computers. So it felt like a tangent, but it really wasn't, in my opinion. And let me reel it back in here. But when we grew up in computers, it was exciting. It was an exciting place to be. It was an exciting space. It was exciting technology. It was emerging. And now it's just scary.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point, Blake.
I think it's only scary to the people that are aware. If you ask your average kid, do you think the internet's scary? They'd probably say no.
Right. They don't understand.
That's right.
They don't know what can happen on the internet.
There's a lot more insidiousness.
I bet you if you ask that one kid or maybe several kids that stumbled across a YouTube video
Oh, yeah.
that was supposed to be YouTube Kids and saw something like Slenderman or something, he's going to say yes.
Not to make it dark or whatever, but did you hear there's these middle school girls? They're like 12 or something.
I watched the film on that. Yeah, the documentary. Yeah.
Terrible. The girl, did she end up dying?
No, she didn't die.
Yeah, they like lured her for Slender Man or something.
Yeah, there we go. These two girls read about a story on the internet in a dark place, and then they lured this girl out into the woods to try and kill her because the internet said so.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. This is a few years ago, too.
6 or 7 years ago.
It's just sad.
That stuff is just sickening,
It is.
but it's also, for a parent, really difficult to track that. You literally would have to be doing active surveillance to know and to be able to intercept. Your kid is probably not going to talk to you about all the stuff that they do on the internet. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't trust your kids. I'm just saying it's not really about that. It's that you can't trust everyone else on the internet. My point, though, is that there are technologies and there are solutions that we have experience with to do the surveillance in a way where you would know about something like that. We're reliant upon the FBI and a lot of law enforcement to intercept these types of things. But I think we as parents need to do more too, because if we are able to intercept something like that and then hand it to the authorities and say, look, we created a honeypot and they almost lured my kid into this situation, go arrest them. That would, I think, for society be a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think most people wouldn't even know where to start with something like that.
I wouldn't.
I wouldn't either.
My point is that there are things like keyloggers that obviously a lot of hackers like keyloggers, but keyloggers can be a good tool to use because now you can track your child's text messages and things like that. You could consider getting a hardened device instead of giving your kid an iPhone. They have new devices now where they're locked down, where they're not allowed to call anybody unless the parent puts the phone number in there and authorizes it. So there's all these different things that you can do as a parent to help with this situation.
I think about it sometimes, just how grateful I am. I think MySpace came out when I was in my mid-20s, right? So cell phones with cameras didn't come out until around that time too. I remember I was living in the Virgin Islands at the time. This is so cool. But just imagining the pressure that kids must feel with social media and everything being able to be recorded. And oh man, I'm just so glad. I'm so glad I missed that. I don't have kids, but I do have nieces and nephews. And just thinking about ways to keep them safe, it's a lot for parents. I imagine that's a real challenge on a regular basis.
Oh, absolutely.
What do you teach your kids about the internet, Craig?
Stay away from social media.
I was curious too. You've talked about like how you limit your children to the devices that they can use and the frequency at which they can use them. So maybe you could elaborate on that.
Yeah, I think every situation's different and there's no necessarily right or wrong way to do it. It's really personal and individualized. But for me and my wife, we allow them screen time. We don't even allow it every day. On the weekends, we'll let them watch like a show on TV or something on their Kindle or on their iPad or whatever device. And it's usually no more than an hour. And that's it. I've heard other parents tell me similar things, but when a kid plays a video game or watches a show, it actually changes their behavior depending on what it is. Sometimes the brain releases dopamine and that affects their behavior. For example, if I give my son 30 minutes or an hour to play a video game, first of all, he doesn't want to stop. So if I ask him, okay, your time's up. No, just 2 more minutes, just 2 more minutes. He doesn't want to stop. But it's almost like an addiction. Mm-hmm. And then it's withdrawal because he doesn't want to stop. And then he becomes angry and his behavior is not good. Sometimes he's angry because he has to get off. So my point is that we limit the amount of time. Now, if we're doing like a road trip or something, we'll give them their Kindles or whatever, and they can use them in the car. And that'll be their maximum screen time. We're all together in the car kind of thing. But they don't come home and play video games. We encourage them to go outside. We encourage them to play with their friends. We encourage them to go in the pool or whatever. There's different things that they could be doing aside from sticking their face in front of a game. It's not that we're anti-technology, obviously, or anti-video games.
Obviously.
But it really does change their behavior. They have friends that literally will just stay inside and play video games. And we would just prefer them to be playing with friends outside. Even when I was growing up and I took stuff apart and things like that, I would still go outside. I wouldn't be locked in a cave. I would like to go outside and play with my friends and play basketball or baseball, whatever it is. So my point is, I think the best advice I could say is try to make it as balanced as possible. And I know that with some parents that are working or working from home or maybe single parents, they kind of use the technology a bit like a babysitter. And I'm not saying that's necessarily wrong. It's just that if you can balance it, and I think the end result would be better than with it unbalanced.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that's clear. And then one thing too is teach your children about safety, obviously physical safety. I feel like the Hunchback of Notre Dame now.
Oh, yeah.
Something, take it from me. Teach your kid about, my parents say, hey, don't sit too close to the TV. They used to say that, but I still did it anyways. It never stopped me from doing it. And now I wear glasses. Or I've been working from my computer, a laptop. And I was like, oh, it's a laptop. It's meant to be in my lap, or it's meant to be on a little table. And I'd be bending over, working from a laptop. Probably within 5 years, I'll probably have carpal tunnel, or maybe have to at least have surgery for it. Yeah, I think if I could leave our listeners with something, teach your children about posture and the negative effects that these devices have. We don't even know yet. We don't even know. We really don't know.
The long-term effects that it could have.
You're putting radio waves. If you're talking on a cell phone, you're putting radio waves to your brain.
It's all about balancing too, right?
For sure.
It's hard to say if that really caused you to have to get glasses, but obviously that might not be in anyone's best interest to stare at a computer for 8 hours straight. It might be a good idea to look away. What is that thing that you said before?
20.
Yeah.
Every 20 minutes, look 20 feet for 20 seconds. Eye doctor taught me that.
I don't think I even do that consistently, but it's all about creating good habits.
Yeah. Or obviously not using your computer in dark. That's another one. I went to the doctor today, the neurologist, and was like, dude, how old are you? You've got all the symptoms of 9 to 5 are on the computer. And yeah, that's how I make a living. And that's how I provide for my family and provide for my dogs and whatever. But anyways, you should never be using a laptop in your lap. That's the reason why they make the stands. So you're supposed to elevate your screen to your face level, to eye level, and not be looking down at it.
Oh, man.
So yeah, I went on like an epic adventure here in Tbilisi trying to find a laptop holder. And now I got one. And now I'm starting to get into the phase where like I order 144-degree ergonomical keyboards. They're tilted in 144 degrees. So that way it doesn't strain because the straight keyboards is not good. And then they've got the ergonomical mouses where your hand is sideways. So it's like you're holding a cup or something instead of the flat mouses. Whoever designed these, they didn't consider those things the prolonged use, right, of a computer. And of course, I've got a blue light blocker, screen protector. I got one on my phone now. So starting to get there.
Well, good.
Back when I was growing up, it was CRT, cathode ray tubes, right? Big kind of boxy monitors, and it was radiation. They literally would give off radiation. You had to try to pick a model that didn't give off too much radiation. But again, it's all about how much time you spend in front of it. And I don't think anybody does it perfectly. My point is that, like you pointed out, Blake, you don't want to have a laptop in your lap for a long period of time. Does it mean that you can never use it on your lap? No, it's just, it's not ideal for a health situation. You have a warm to sometimes hot laptop device on that's really close to your skin and your body. You can get burned if something happens with the battery, which is most likely lithium ion. It could catch fire, and there's all sorts of Google stories online with malfunctions of people getting burned and things like that. So same thing with your cell phone. You don't want to keep your cell phone in your pocket for long periods of time. If it overheats or whatever, the cell phone could explode and cause you physical harm. So it's all these different things that can happen. I think as far as our podcast for today, I think that if people could make sure to take the training, have your kids take the training, it's not a lot of time. We're talking about maybe 2 hours of your time to get really good training at compliancearmor.com and go through the testing. And then you get micro trainings every week and every month to keep you up to date. And you and your children should go through it. That's essential nowadays. Aside from that, patches, update your systems, make sure you're not wasting time on old, outdated systems.
Don't give your kids old computers unless they want to take it apart.
Yeah. And here's another thing too. Don't give your kids or don't give anyone your old computers or devices without proper sanitization. And what I mean by that is you don't want to give your computer that you were maybe doing banking or financials on. And if you don't know how to properly sanitize it and format it and do all the work to prep it, that's how people steal identity as well. They'll garage sale it or whatever. And so you need to make sure you remove the hard drive or you physically destroy it, or you pay for a certificate of destruction from a company that's well known and reputable that can give you the attestation that it has been properly destroyed. Personally, for me, I just rip the hard drive out and I keep it.
Something I was just thinking about too, and Erin, if we wind back the clock, and this is probably going to be counterintuitive to how Craig got into cybersecurity, but if you see your child taking apart an electronic device, stop them immediately. The reason why I say that is because there is power supplies in there. I was looking at one of the iFixit tutorials for a MacBook, and some of the MacBook or some of the Mac computers, like the iMacs and stuff, they have a 280 or something watt power supply or 400 watt power supply inside of that computer. So
Oh, wow.
if a child touches the wrong area, hey, you're going to go to Light City.
Yeah.
Obviously, we got lucky. We're here, right? But just a disclaimer. So if you see your child taking apart an electronic device, not a good idea.
Not necessarily a bad idea. It just needs to be supervised.
Make sure it's turned off.
Let them take apart and let them get a can of kit. Let them get a can of kit that doesn't have a power supply, and let them build a little Raspberry Pi. There's safe ways to do it. But yeah, you're right. And then, get monitoring software so you can see what's going on, time usage, and where they're visiting and where they're spending their time.
I remember back, I think it was like 20 years ago now, when I got certified from WebSense. And WebSense was technology. It was like brand new stuff back then. And it was surveillance technology for businesses to monitor their employees and make sure they weren't going to social media or whatever. Online shopping, I think what it was 20 years ago. Social media wasn't really a thing yet. So anyway, we would install this stuff. And oftentimes, a lot of businesses, they would just install it just to kind of monitor and kind of see, do we have a problem at our company or not? And it gives them that depth and visibility. And it's just so interesting. The people that you would think wouldn't really do that do it. It's just an eye-opening experience. So that might be kind of a way to start with children. Like I said, it's not that you don't trust them. It's just that you want to protect them and keep them safe, because the deck is pretty stacked for things that are bad to happen and how easy it is for something bad to happen.
Yeah.
So in my opinion, I don't think it's a bad idea to have technology like that to tell you what's happening, where people are going or where your kids are going or whatever. But yeah, it's different for everyone. It's a personal preference. It's balance. There's a lot to it. But there are solutions like Quad9, like I recommended earlier, that are good solutions. Now, you don't get any kind of granular control with Quad9. Quad9 is free. So if you want granular control over, hey, I don't want my kid to go to weapon websites, or I don't want my kids to go to the bad websites or whatever, you can get that granular control with different kinds of filtering technologies. But the free stuff, it is what it is. You don't have any control over it, but it's better than nothing.
Yeah, we had a podcast where we mentioned encrypted DNS. And if you get encrypted DNS from us, it was like the 5 cheapest things you can do to secure yourself today or something. It's around $120 an endpoint per year.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very inexpensive.
And you can go to compliancearmor.com and choose how many endpoints you got.
Boom.
Boom. $120 a year. It's less than your coffee.
Yeah, that's true.
Great place to start.
Cheaper than your tea.
Yes. Right.
Turkish tea.
All right, guys. We've done our hour here, paid our dues for the day.
Yeah, that was good. And I think really informative. And I think that could be really helpful for people and help to secure the younger generation. It's always a good thing.
We just touched on the onion layers, but there's many more layers that could be done. These are just kind of easy tips, some of them free, that you could implement right away. But yeah, be sure to reach out to us and we can give you a more customized approach.
Yeah, if you have any questions, hit us up. You can also email us. We do have a podcast at petronellatech.com email now too, so feel free to use that. If you have any questions, or give us a call, and we'll be happy to help you out.
We're here.
We're all here because we're not all there.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, have a good one, guys.
All right, everybody.
All right, take care.
Thanks for listening to the Cybersecurity and Compliance Podcast with Craig Petronella. For other episodes and more information, visit petronellatech.com. Also visit our other websites, compliancearmor.com and blockchainsecurity.com. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for listening, and stay secure.